What's good yet, and welcome to this video. So you want to hit 300k on Nightmare? I'll try my best to help you out. So what I've included in this video is number one, what Lotus aspects to pick with or without Wukong. Number two, a tier list to kind of help you boil down what kind of unit you should be putting your attention to when trying out for these stages. So a tier list of the most relevant units for this piece of content. Then the way you gear your units, and then lastly the way you time your ultimates and use your abilities to successfully beat this boss, as well as obviously general team building tips. Now, big disclaimer early on, do not go into this video expecting that you'll be leaving with a team that is capable of beating Nightmare at 300,000. Especially if you do not have a Wukong, it really is a very high bar. It is really rather difficult to put together a team that has this capability. It is really hard on gear, really hard on awakenings, and once more, Wukong is pretty much what you're going to see, for example, in a complete top 100 for this event. So now that you've know this, let's get straight into it.
Our research begins.
So now for the golden elixirs. So what you want to do with the golden elixirs is pretty simple. Number one, I show you the Wukong skill tree, and then number two, I show you the skill tree if you do not have him. So first off, you just easily take the top row, just take all of these. They are pretty much the best talents you're going to be able to find. And then the key one for Wukong is down here. When the Sage clone dies, it inflicts vulnerability, very important. And obviously this one with the 30% rage, which is what makes him so super strong in this event. And which you obviously already have from the beginning. Then there's kind of like two different ones. You either pick Monkey Madness for 30% attack but 100% more damage. Or you pick Lotus Aspect Cultivation for more clones but 100% damage. I prefer the Bronze Monkey one over the Monkey Madness. Otherwise, you have Merciless 1, Merciless 2 and Merciless 1 for 40% more damage against vulnerability. You have Simian Stride for more damage after a crit hit. You skip the crit rate once because you have maxed out crit rate. You skip the attack speed one because you already get 100 attack speed right there. And then right here you take this one, which is basically a weaker version of Soulbound Arcana. And this one down here, which increases crit damage by 50 once you use an ultimate. Otherwise, you could also, for example, technically take out this monkey one and select this one down here. Now, let's do the whole thing for if you do not have Wukong and you still want to try your best at reaching 300k, which would look the following. So you would skip out on this whole row because you obviously don't have the Wukong to utilize it properly. So you still unlock all the rows. You still go for the vulnerability because the damage buff is just too strong. You still go for the crit seer, the double set effects, and then you can pick the 10% more damage as well as 30% more crit rate. So this is kind of the skill tree you really want to go with if you do not own a Wukong, because you can't really make use of the Wukong talents anyway. And the 5% damage is weak, 50 attack speed is weak, you do not need the crit rate. So this is what you pick. So next up, obviously you want to know how do you build a team, how do you rate your units. There's so many units in this game, who is good here, who is rather bad, who should you pick. So there's obviously the tiers, which with God, SAB, whatever for the damage dealers, and then you have the essential tier. The essential tier is essential because you need at least, for example, 1 Dolores and 1 Constance as your or as your inspiration booster, so you pick either or. And then you have the choice between 3 healers, so either Hollow, Elowen, or Leia. Technically Nisande can also work, but it's kind of a weird one. So yeah, it's the 3 of them for, and then it basically gets progressively harder to make use of them. So the hardest by far to use is Hollow, because you don't use any other defensive units really. So that's why you kind of struggle a bit with just using Hollow, because it's going to be a lot of damage that you're taking, but you can make up for it with attack speed, healing effect, and proper stats. But it is ridiculously high stats, that's just the way it is. Otherwise, we have Elwyn and Leia. Elwyn and Leia, obviously the favorites. They're both legendary. They both heal more. They both give a lot of rage regen. They, in the case of Leia, even give a damage boost. So that's kind of the category what you want to build your team with. So for example, you could just pick a Dolores and a Dolores and a Holo, and it could straight up work. Besides that, let's have a quick look at the damage tiers right here. So you have Wukong. He gives 30% rage. He does a crap ton of damage. Obviously, his damage isn't going to be the highest at A0, but he's still going to be the most valuable unit in your team because he's going to provide the 30% rage, or even potentially the 40% max HP healing if you're struggling with staying alive. Besides that, then we kind of start to get into the S tier, where you have the Lust with Arrogance, or Arrogance with Lust. It doesn't really make a difference. Both of them are super strong. Twyla also comes in incredibly hot here. She does a ton of damage. Same goes for Kigiri. Obviously, as soon as you have some of these characters at A3, A5, they move up into the God tier. It's just the way it is. Someone that can be really, really nice here is Lyra, because Lyra inflicts permanent vulnerability. So especially if you do not have a Wukong, trying to utilize Lyra with the permanent vulnerability and the high magic damage can definitely give you an edge. Then you have a bonded Silas, very important. He needs to be bonded, otherwise he doesn't deal nearly as much damage. Then you have the classical favorites like Voldrum with a crap ton of damage, Hex with a crap ton of damage, Praetus, he's Praetus, right? You have the defense penetrating damage, you have the true damage, you have the extra HP given, you have the Lord effect, he just brings a lot. And then here's kind of the glue that keeps these whole nightmare units together, and that is obviously Torador. Torador really just there for that incredible Lord bonus combined with the defense reduction, so allowing your team to do even more damage. Otherwise, if you do not have a Torador, you could for example run a Wrath, a Wukong, an Arrogance, and then slot in someone like an Ares, because Ares also gives you the defense down, not quite as strong, but also gives you the vulnerability. So that's something you could use if you do not have a Wukong. Then you have Ingrid. Ingrid obviously in her single target stance, a lot of damage. Here's like the Arrogance Lust combination. It is what it is. Then you're kind of getting into the Infernates, where you have the Zillitu Twin Flame combo, which can do a lot of damage. You have Soul Kittens, but he's really not that prevalent. Lord Phineas, if you really want to go for Infernates, he's kind of the one who takes them to the next level, who's the one who keeps the team together. So for example, a team would consist of Soul Kittens, Lyra, Sir Phineas, Zillitu, for example, right? And then you obviously have still the option to go with the Piercer squad, which would kind of require Yova, because Araka doesn't really do much damage, and the Epic Lords, they can't keep up. The problem with Nightmare difficulty is you need banger units, and everybody needs to either pull their weight through Rage Regen / supportive abilities or Lord bonuses, or they need to carry in damage. Then you have kind of like the units I say put in S tier for a reason, and that is the shield breakers, right? If you're really struggling with the 10 million, 30 million, 50 million shield, Micah and Setchum can be the ones to help you break through it. Besides that, you then have Alistair. So Alistair, yeah, Alistair is really nice if you have, for example, Praetus or an Ingrid or Leia as a Lord, because he's in the right faction, and also he reduces the enemy's damage dealt by 30%. Kinda, it just allows you to not have to worry about the AoE damage from the boss all that much anymore. Otherwise, you kind of then have like the A category. The biggest issue here would probably be if you need to go into the A category to find your heroes, you're most likely not going to break 300k, or better said, the minimum requirement to break 300k while using units out of the A faction is that you have to have a Wukong. If you don't have a Wukong, and you kind of have to already start picking out of the A faction or below, it's not really going to work out, and you should probably just play the hard mode instead. And you also don't have to feel too bad, because I am pretty certain if you play hard mode every day, you are still going to be able to buy the most essential things from the shop, and you're not really going to miss out on much. So now that we've also picked out our units, and it's time to just quickly go over gear, Again, it is pretty much currently still the super popular sets, like for example Soulbound Arcana and Infernal Roar. Depending on your focus, like the focus really doesn't make too much of a difference. It's all about just having these good pieces. Like for example, you could be running a lot of attack, which is for example advised on Arbiter units like Praetus. You could also be running a lot of crit damage. So the reason why you can run a lot of crit damage is because you have the inspiration units like Dolores or like Constance on the field. The reason why you could be running a lot of attack is because you also have a lot of crit damage from the skill tree. So it doesn't really make too much of a difference. Like you could go 140% crit damage, you could also go 180%, you could also go 230%. It really doesn't, like there's no specific thing. It isn't like for example Guild Boss 1 where you really want to go as high crit damage as possible, or Guild Boss 2 where you want to go as high as possible in attack. It really is just assemble your best gear possible, make it all work together, and then obviously equip the strongest artifacts. Besides that, for example, my Elowin is running a lot of attack speed at 400, around 250% attack, and then 100 healing effect with some extra rage region. Artifact wise we have an euphoric orb. For Constance for example we have an invigoration set at around 380% attack total with a bit of attack speed, and then some nice 40% rage region, as well as this artifact right here. Our Torador for example is in a damage set. You could also put him into an invigoration set, but that only really makes that much sense if you for example have like a really high awakened nightmare fighter that you want to specifically boost. And yeah, gear wise it really is, there really isn't like no golden line. Just put on like the best gear you have, and if it's not enough then it's not enough and you have to play hard mode, because again, once more, hard mode isn't the end of the world. You're still going to be able to buy your important resources, and don't take it too harsh if you can't get 300k in this event. So let's say you've now assembled your Avengers, your team you want to be fighting against for this boss. The way you pretty much want to do this is obviously find a combination of ground units or platform units that work with either Dolores or Constance. If you're using a lot of fighters, you're most likely going to need to rely on Constance. If you're using a lot of platform units, you're going to have to rely on Dolores until we get more inspiration units. But for example, let's say we were to place Arrogance down here, give him inspiration buff, Salazar up front, Lust so she can cover all our nightmare units, then Zillitu down here, Twin Fiend over here, and then we finish it off with Elowin. Obviously your healer should be covering all your units so you can keep them alive. And really for the first part, or for the first shit, what you're going to do timing wise is going to be you just activate all ultimates. You can play it manually. You're going to be able to increase your score. I do highly recommend playing it manually in the beginning if your score is off by, let's say, 20-25 million. But the real crucial part, and what's going to cost you most time, is going to be either A, Celestial Requiem because it kills you, or B, the shield because it's just too strong. So pretty much either from the 30 or the 50 million shield on, depending on your team, you're going to have to take it into your own hand. And timing wise, it really isn't all that difficult, you could say. So for example, let's say we started from here, we can still keep it on 2x speed. But what we're going to do is we're going to hold on, for example, hold on to our Elowin ultimate because we really don't have any benefit when we use it. We're going to keep all our damage ultimates in the bag because, for example, if we were to prepare for the shield. So here's Celestial Requiem. If Celestial Requiem happens, you know there's still a whole bunch of time until the shield pops, because the Celestial Requiem takes pretty long. And then around here, at around half, you can, for example, start with the Elowin ult to keep everyone healthy, and then even introduce the Wood Elf towards the end, for example. So now after the Celestial Requiem, you can just let everything run through. You see, for example, Zillitu's ultimate takes a while, she also takes a while to come back, but yeah. So here we are at 80%, and then he's going to start his shield, and then you can pretty much go in with your needed ultimates, and then fast forward time from there on again. and then pretty much beat the shield. The same goes for the 50 million, and it all really depends on if your team can break it, right? Sometimes it really isn't all that much about gear or even about unit composition, but really just about awakenings, right? For example, if you had an A5 arrogance compared to an A1 arrogance, the difference would be staggering. If you had even if you just have a Wukong, like just imagine a Wukong right here with a space where Constance is giving rage to everybody. So yeah, 30% rage on every clone death is really, really significant. So yeah, this is how you beat the shields. It really is just a gear question / awakening question, and that's pretty much all of it at the end of the day. Peace.